Welcome back to another episode of the MacRumors Show. Hartley, good afternoon, man. It looks like we finally got the memo and that we're not going to actually match sweatshirts today. Actually, we both forgot. We did not talk about this. We just
No, but I thought about it, and I thought, you won't have this sweater.
You're absolutely right. I do not have that sweater. I want that sweater, though. Maybe you should send one over for Christmas.
It's very festive.
Speaking of Christmas, this is our last episode before break. We are going to be off for the next 3 weeks. So happy holidays to everyone that's out there celebrating, and we'll catch everyone in the new year. And speaking of the new year, so many new products that we're expecting, some more exciting than others. So let's jump into what we can expect to see from Apple in 2025. And we'll kind of go in what we assume is the correct chronological order. Of course, these are based on rumors, so things can change. But we're expecting one of the first things that we'll see in March is a new iPhone SE 4. We've talked about this before, but I don't know, it's been a long time. So let's kind of jump through this. This is basically an iPhone 14 rehash, kind of update the internals a little bit, go to USB-C. Honestly, probably makes it one of the more recommendable phones to people who just want a good iPhone at a cheaper price. Are you expecting anything crazy this year for the iPhone SE4? I mean, obviously, it's going to have a big redesign, so that's a pretty big deal there, but it's not a redesign in the sense of, being an entirely new looking iPhone. It's just new for the SE.
I think this is going to be one of the most important new Apple devices of the year in 2025, simply because I think the update is so substantial over the current model, and retaining a price point of under $500. We're not exactly sure what it will be yet, but we are expecting it to be under $500. I think it will be so compelling to so many users. I think this will be the default iPhone to buy, because it's really there's very few compromises here for the price point. You're getting OLED, you're getting a fairly modern iPhone design, no more home button, no more chunky bezels, a 48 megapixel camera, USB-C, the action button, 8 gigabytes of memory and Apple Intelligence support as well, the A18 chip, and you're even going to get something that is completely new that doesn't exist on any of Apple's current products, which is this new 5G modem, which I don't think is particularly anything to get too excited about, but it may lead to some better battery life, and it's pretty interesting that this is going to be the first device that we'll see it in. So all in all, I think this will be the iPhone to recommend. I think that this could be an incredibly popular product.
Sure.
So while maybe it's not so exciting for us with our iPhone 16 Pros, I think for ordinary users, this will be a really good product.
I think it's funny when Apple always puts like their first ever, X feature into a product that's not not the mainstream Pro version, like highest end. So yeah, like you said, a 5G modem that's made by Apple might not sound exciting to everyone, but that is a big deal because, like you said, and I think we've talked about this in the past. Like, how many times have we kind of attributed bad battery life to just like horrible cell reception, constantly, needing that ability to have, like the efficiency in getting a proper signal, and you're not constantly wasting your battery life trying to find that. Like, that could really help out. And so, I mean, I don't know. I think you're right. Better battery life is a huge deal. And if that trickles on down to some of these thinner iPhones that we're expecting later on the year, like that could be really important. But it's not going to be probably used in marketing. Actually, it might, but I don't think it'll be used as the main focal point. Also, people that I know that still rock a iPhone SE mostly love it because it still has the home button. How do you feel about that?
I think it's overdue at this point. App developers are having to still optimize their apps for effectively the iPhone 6's display, which is ridiculous considering that device came out in 2013. So it's time. It's time to move to OLED. It's time to move to this bezel-less design. And you even get Face ID, which is a significant upgrade over Touch ID when it comes to things like Apple Pay. And while some people may not be used to it, upgrading to this device. I think it's long overdue at this point to modernize and move away from that. I don't think anyone, unless you're really set in your ways, honestly wants to retain an old design.
I I honestly wonder what's the appeal for an iPhone, like, okay, so at the time this comes out, the current iPhone would be the iPhone 16. So like what would you say that would appeal to others besides the extra camera, like to the mainstream audience? Like what would you try to sell? How would you try to sell the 16 over the SE when it's cheaper? And
There isn't going to be a huge amount in it. I would expect that it would be the ultra wide camera, even things as basic as color options,
yeah.
which people tend to get excited about. And the design will undoubtedly be more refined. You will also have dynamic island, slimmer bezels. It's not a huge amount. These differences will be more pronounced when we get the iPhone 17, because then we'll be adding features like ProMotion, which of course the iPhone SE doesn't have. But considering the price difference, if the iPhone SE does go up in price a little bit, let's say it does debut at $499, that possibly is a justifiable jump up to the iPhone 16 if you want just a sprinkling of some extra features in there.
I don't know. I think it's going to be hard. But when you get to the 17, like you said, then I believe you might be more correct there, where it would make more sense. All right. So then also in March, perhaps same event, right? Do you think this would be an event? This could be event worthy.
I don't know. It's hard to tell with this particular product you're about to mention.
Yeah.
So this is going to be Apple's Command Center smart
I feel like it has
home
to
device.
be at an event. I feel like it has to be.
It might be a bit abstract if it was not, but it depends on this device's price point. Like if this is a $150 widget screen that also has a small speaker for playing music, and it's basically just a HomePod mini with a small 6-inch display, square display, a proximity sensor so that it can tell how far away you are, and therefore will adjust the text size on the widgets based on your distance, and a little camera for FaceTime calls. If that's all it is, I can see it theoretically in a press release. Apple has released entire significant products via press release before, not least the AirPods Pro and the AirPods Max. Both of those just came out of nowhere via press release. So if this is a small scale product, that is conceivable to me. But it all depends. I mean, if this comes out at $300 and it's a far more polished device with a very rich feature set, then maybe it would warrant an event. But who knows anymore, really, with Apple events. It feels like they're incredibly unpredictable since they've moved to the pre-recorded format. Just think back at the Macs that we had unveiled recently being released over separate calendar days via press release, when those were far more significant updates and far bigger releases than at the event for Macs the previous October. So I honestly don't know anymore.
I think like if you take the iPhone SE4, this Command Center, and like the iPad 11 that needs a refresh, put those all in an event, that could make for a decent, like, pretty quick event that they could do. And I feel like that would make sense if they're all in that price point too, of like lower end products. But I don't know. I'm having a hard time figuring this out as well.
Yeah, I don't know if they need an event. I mean, the iPhone SE, other than the first model, has never been featured at an event. It has always just been a quiet early year press release.
Sure.
So I think it's reasonable to expect that to continue. And with this Command Center product expected to be a fairly low-end product, a little bit more akin to the HomePod mini, it wouldn't surprise me if that follows via press release as well. But it all depends. I mean, there are other devices. So the next thing that we're expecting sort of March to June is the MacBook Air. That is just an M4 chip update. That really does not need to be an event. That can just be a press release.
Yeah.
Personally, right. I quite like the press releases. I think that when we look back to how these three Mac models were unveiled this year, I think it worked really well, giving each product one day in the spotlight. And I feel like each of those products got more attention than they would have got if they were all announced simultaneously. If that had happened simultaneously, we know that the focus would have been on the Mac Mini, then probably the MacBook Pro, and then the iMac. But in inverting that order, Apple was able to make sure that each of those products had some time in the sun. Um, so
Yeah, but
I
I
can
feel like
believe
it's
that.
still I still feel like once they hear about it, like the attention level drops off dramatically. So like you get the Mac Mini in the middle of it and you're like, "Oh yeah, this is amazing." And you're still talking about the Mac Mini, then you get the MacBook Pro and you're like, well, it's not that great. Like nothing really changed that much. I'm going to go back to focusing more on the Mac Mini. So like what's the difference between just that and just spreading it out? I feel like it's still getting
It depends, though, because I think sometimes, as the 2023 Mac event showed, I think it can actually cause a little bit of frustration in the Apple community when the updates are not substantial enough. And if we had an Apple event early next year that's the iPhone SE4, which is not really any new hardware, it is existing hardware being put
sure.
into a refreshed product. We then
Yeah.
get a MacBook Air refresh and then a series of iPad refreshes, and that is an event. That is
No,
potentially quite
no,
tiresome.
I'm saying an event would have to have that new command center, and that
Yeah.
would need to be a substantially like it can't be this like the way you described it made it seem not exciting at all. It needs to be hyped up. I'm not saying it needs to be expensive for it to be interesting, but it does need to be something that like they need to explain to us and showcase in many ways, how or why we need this. And yes, they can still do all of this by just releasing the videos that they film for an event anyways. They film it in the exact same manner. But I feel like there's nothing quite like an Apple event day. The hype is just there. People are anticipating it. You have 2 weeks basically of like, okay, the invites are out. Like, let's dive into what we can think. And there's just like a constant buzz. Whether or not it's a lot of buzz, it's still a consistent buzz up until that point. Then everything spikes up. And then that's when we're, looking at pre-orders and things like that. I don't know. I just feel like if you're going to introduce a brand new product like this, one in which Apple has never done before, you should probably have some sort of bigger buzz around it. And the only way I think you can do that is by, having an event. I don't know. I would love to see the data to see like how much sales, are impacted whether they have an event or do a press release. You know, like some things are just going to get bought no matter what because, it's an iPhone is an iPhone, you're going to buy it. But like year over year, they released MacBook Air 1 year with an event, 1 year via press release. I would love to know which one did better. But of course, there's always going to be different circumstances too that impact that, whether it's a massive update or, I don't know. There's tons of things that go into it. But yeah, you're right. An iPad, MacBook Air, and an iPhone SE would be boring. So that's why I'm thinking you need to put that new command center in there somewhere. Honestly, the first half of the year kind of looks a little boring, to be quite honest, except for the command center. I mean, MacBook Air for those who need it, that's expected anywhere from March to June. iPad 11, we just talked about, really
Apple
not going to get.
Intelligence is pretty good for that. And considering that's a low
Sure,
cost product, I think
sure.
that I will be recommending plenty of people to pick up an iPad
Oh,
11
yeah,
next year.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. But it's still not, it's not just like the iPhone SE. It's existing things that we already have. So you can only do so much with the hype around that. iPad Air 7, yeah, I mean,
That's going to be more minor than it was last year. Last year, of course,
sure,
we,
it was
or
huge.
rather this year at the time of recording,
Oh
uh,
yeah,
it was the switch to the portrait cameras, the landscape cameras, and the introduction of the 13-inch model. Um, that is not due a redesign yet. It's not due a change of display technology either. So just the M3 or the M4 chip, just keeping that device up to date. But perhaps slightly more interestingly for the iPad Air, we are expecting a new keyboard to replace the existing one, which is now was actually initially designed for the iPad Pro, but
yeah.
it's getting a little bit old now. And the iPad Pro now has this nice one with this aluminium top case and a function row and backlighting. So something like that is expected to come down to the iPad Air.
And I was talking about how much I love my 13-inch iPad Air. I've been using it quite a bit at home, and I will say that yes, the Magic Keyboard is not as good as the new one, obviously, but I don't even need all of the, aluminum palm rest and the larger glass trackpad. Like, that's nice, but I just need that function row. I never realized how much I miss that, except for then when you start going back and using the other one.
I find that the haptic trackpad also makes a huge difference to me.
Sure.
I am way more inclined to use my iPad for basic tasks like note taking and email, simply because of the new keyboard.
Yeah, I agree. Um, what else are we? AirTag starts to get AirTag starts to get interesting now. So we're expecting that somewhere in mid to 2025. Do you think maybe at WWDC where they can spend a little bit more time talking about how the software is going to be impacted with the new ultra wideband chip?
To me, this seems like a
New
press release
features.
product. It
Press
also
release,
seems like a
yeah.
press release product because it's
Yeah.
not a redesign. We're not expecting any differences to how it charges, or rather to how it's powered. It will continue to use disposable batteries. The differences here are things that I can imagine being written in a press release. So the most significant thing is to switch to the second generation ultra wideband chip, which has a
Yeah.
far longer range. This is what was introduced in the iPhone 15 models last year. It enables better precision finding. It's more power efficient. And then there's been a lot of controversy around AirTags being used for stalking and nefarious purposes. So I can imagine in a press release Apple talking about how there are better tamper protections. So one of these is they're going to make it harder to remove the speaker, which of course will dissuade people from using that in a more subversive way. The more interesting rumor related to this is integration with Apple Vision Pro. This was a rumor from Ming-Chi Kuo earlier in the year. And I don't really know what that would be.
Right.
But it would make sense. They've filed some patents related to sort of beacons that you could place around the home that would appear differently or signify something different in a spatial environment. So I don't know if that could be used in an area where you commonly would use your headset, and you would place an AirTag there to help your headset understand its proximity in relation to things. I don't know.
Dude, I just had an idea. How cool would it be if somehow wherever your AirTag item was located throughout the house, let's say you put it in your wallet and you lost your wallet, put the Vision Pro on, and somehow it's able to show you in an AR, VR space, like, here's where it's at. Like, I know it's under the couch in the middle, because, you kind of got an idea with the phone, but like, you're still looking for it when it's in a dark location. Like, being able to see that in some sort of overlay would be really, really cool. And that is why I feel like, AirTag 2, Mac Studio, Mac Pro, these are some of the things we're expecting in mid 2025. Why couldn't it be at, in years past, WWDC had a Mac Studio, Mac Pro upgrade. Why couldn't it be in there?
I suppose it could be.
We didn't have hardware last year. I thought that was kind of boring, right?
I mean,
there was so many other things.
Mac Studio and Mac Pro are highly likely for WWDC simply because the Mac Studio has appeared twice there before. It's more of an enthusiast's audience for that rather than an average consumer's audience. So it makes sense to kind of slide it in there. I mean, even thinking way back to the trash can Mac Pro, that was unveiled at WWDC. So those devices seem to be a little bit more at home in the middle of the year. And also, these are going to be the last M4 Macs that we're expecting. Once these are released, the whole lineup will be on M4. Not for long, but that's where we should be by the middle of the year.
So tell me more about that. You think we're going to get an Ultra chip this year for it?
Yeah, so it should be M4 Max and M4 Ultra for the Mac Studio, which replaces the M2 Max and M2 Ultra, and then only the M4 Ultra for the Mac Pro, just like it is right now. We're not expecting any other differences. This is simply a chip refresh.
Yeah, but that's significant because we haven't had an Ultra chip in 2 years now.
Yeah, so this should be by far the most powerful Apple Silicon chip, and it should be interesting to see what people, particularly within the creative community, are able to do with that, just because of how much of a significant performance bump this will be. I don't think that, to be honest, the Mac Pro and the Mac Studio really need an annual chip refresh anyway. I don't think anyone is going to be upgrading from their say there was an M3 Mac Pro, from upgrading from your M3 to your M4. So it makes sense to put that on a 24-month cycle.
I'd even say for those who have FOMO and don't want to miss out, maybe make it a 3-year cycle. Let's go. Let's save us some money here.
I can see that in the long term.
Yeah. I also will say that I just said in a video recently, reviewing the base model M4 MacBook Pro, that I could basically do everything I need to do on there, including all of my video editing, because it's so good. So I feel like people have no longer think I do any real work that justifies a Mac Studio, which I've been telling them for years. No, I don't need a Mac Studio. Is it helpful? Yes. Is it, in some situations, a powerhouse in getting through some of the things that the M4 probably could do, just much, much slower? And probably, the thermals are going to really need to kick in there to prevent things from overheating and starting to get really bad in performance. But like, yeah, I feel like most of us, especially those that are creating videos online and doing what I do specifically, don't really need anything that crazy. But boy, is it nice to get a new Mac Studio with that M4 Ultra. I'll definitely be eyeing that one. But yeah, I think that's a pretty decent. So that's like pretty much half the year.
Yeah, so that
So
takes us up to
yeah,
the second half of the year now.
so that goes iPhone SE, Command Center, which is that weird Home OS hub, MacBook Air, iPads, new Magic Keyboard for that iPad Air, AirTag 2, Mac Studio, Mac Pro. So that's a pretty decent amount of products for the
That's
first
enough.
half of the
And
year.
they overall, if you were to look at a sort of running theme through those devices, they are mainly entry level to mid level devices. They're far more consumer oriented devices, with the exception of the Mac Studio and the Mac Pro. But overall, these are general refreshes. These are not radically redesigned devices. These are largely things that consumers have been exposed to, whether that's the design of the iPhone 14 for the iPhone SE, whether that's the M4 chip in the MacBook Air, or even the second generation ultra wideband chip in the AirTag 2. When we see these announcements coming out, there shouldn't be anything too surprising in here, other than, of course, the command center.
Yeah. Well, all right. So then after WWDC, we're looking at probably not a lot of stuff. Nothing, no events until September. So if anything does come out, looking at you HomePods, if we ever do get a new HomePod somewhere in there, probably press release, right?
Well,
Unless it's that.
I wonder. So we are expecting we're expecting 2 new HomePods and 1 new Apple TV. So that's the HomePod 3, the HomePod Mini 2, and the Apple TV 4K 4. I wonder
Okay.
if actually the command center will end up coming out alongside those, and then we have an Apple event that is focused on the home. 4 home products in total. I could see that.
That goes against the March reports, unless you're thinking that these other HomePods and stuff are not going to happen in that end of the year. Like
I don't know.
year.
It seems to me that these devices would work very well together, and I would even argue that something like the AirTag fits quite well in terms of being this not main product line for Apple. And if Apple is trying to sort of sell its home ecosystem again from scratch and rethink how it's presenting this stuff with things like Home OS and Apple Intelligence. And we're also expecting the HomePod Mini 2 to be a device that gets this custom. This won't be a modem, but it will be a custom Bluetooth and Wi-Fi combined chip, which is sort of obviously related to the 5G modem that we are expecting for the iPhone SE. It would make sense to group these together. Whether that will happen, I don't know. But it would seem peculiar to split out those 3 products that replace existing ones and the command center, especially considering that the HomePod 3 is expected to have a display. Well, what software is that going to run? Is that going to run Home OS?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We need to have an event for these things. And it's just more exciting.
I think an event at some point would be really good for this. And maybe we'll even see an unusual July event or something. Or maybe the HomePod Mini and the Apple TV 4K will end up being pulled earlier in the year. And it may even be that, say, the HomePod 3 gets announced, but then it does not actually launch until later in the year. But this is all the same kind of thing. This is going to be one of Apple's focuses going forward, which is redesigning and reconsidering its smart home lineup. But some of the other upgrades we're expecting there, so we're expecting the HomePod to actually have an A18 chip, just like the iPhone SE, just like the iPhone 16 models, to support Apple Intelligence. And the HomePod Mini, we're not necessarily expecting Apple Intelligence for that, because that will just be an S series Apple Watch chip. But right now, the HomePod Mini, it's over 4 years old.
I was just gonna ask you, how long has it been since we've seen a new
And it's
one?
still good. It's still really good.
Oh, sure.
But if they're going to put a newer chip in there so it's faster, especially at processing on-device requests, we get some improved sound quality. We maybe get that second generation ultra-wideband chip for handoff, some new color options, and we get this new combined Bluetooth and Wi-Fi chip. That's definitely enough to justify a new HomePod Mini.
Sure.
And not least for giving it Wi-Fi 6E, because I think the current HomePod Mini is on Wi-Fi 4. So it would be good to get that updated. The Apple TV is also expected to be a fairly small refresh. The current model is still really good, in my opinion. That currently features an A15 chip. We're expecting that to have something new. So A16, A17 Pro, maybe even A18. And we are also expecting it to get that combined Wi-Fi and Bluetooth chip. No rumors necessarily about it getting Apple Intelligence just yet, but it's not out of the question.
I think that needs it. I really do. Have you seen some of these other products out there? You know, Google's, what are they called? The TV streamer, and like Amazon. They started integrating its own AI, stuff into that. And I think it makes a lot of sense, where it can start to be a little bit better of an algorithm with providing you, things that you might want to watch, or just in search where you might not know what exactly you're looking for, but you have a few things that you can describe it to. And then it's just smart enough to be able to pull from the internet that quickly and just be able to figure out from those prompts, like, oh, you're trying to find maybe these 3 movies. Like, do any of these look familiar to you? Like, that could be really, really helpful.
I wonder, again, if these devices get grouped together, if this is the end of tvOS as we know it, and the Apple TV will also run HomeOS, and we effectively get a brand new operating system unveiled with Apple Intelligence at its core that is called HomeOS, and it runs across the command center, the HomePod 3 with its little round display, and the Apple TV.
So we have some notes here, right? Just brief bullet points on things that we're running through. And everything that I've tried to say that we've said at the same time that's not related to our list has been exactly the same. Like, I need the Apple TV. It doesn't need to change in hardware. The hardware's fine. I need a refresh in the OS. I need something there, right? I think it's time. It's kind of getting a little stale, in my opinion, and there's just so much more room for improvement. Now, it works totally, fine. And everybody, I think, can say that they like it for the most part, but I don't know. Doesn't it just feel like there's something missing compared to more of the other modern streaming platforms out there?
I agree. And I think that when it comes to things like the TV app, I think there is a long way to go in terms of library management for purchases. I think there is a long way to go in terms of recommendations as well. Right now, it's pretty good that you can scroll through different channels, different streaming providers. But I think that Apple could go way further in terms of suggesting content, and also using the Apple TV to serve up other things like your photos and videos. I would really like a feature on there that would make more of my home videos, not just my photos, because I'm looking at them on my TV. Maybe tie in this memories feature that so much is made of on other devices, especially now we have this Apple Intelligence driven memory maker feature. The Apple TV seems like a place where if these features were more at the core or more prominent, I would be way more inclined to use them. I think there's a lot further we can go with that, but maybe HomeOS is the way, because of course we're also going to get it on this command center, and in the long term on this high-end command center with a robotic arm that is not expected next year. That is more of a 2026 thing, but Apple's building a new home platform here, so it'll be very interesting to see what the foundations of this look like.
I agree. And I think that's more exciting, just because it seems like fresh and new, and stuff for the home is always nice if it can be well done and if you're all invested in that ecosystem. And I think most of us listening probably are. So it's time for Apple to start taking it seriously. Do we think we'll get any of those new like other device? Like, isn't there talks of a home camera? Like, when are we expecting those? I already forget. Does that
Those
come
are
out this year?
2026.
Okay, that's what I thought.
It's just Apple. It looks like they're going to sort of kickstart the home strategy with one brand new product and refreshes to everything else. Then going
Okay.
forward, we're going to get this higher end command center with presumably a bigger speaker and the display mounted on a robotic arm that can follow you around. A little bit like center stage for video calls, but actually reorient so that wherever you are in a room, you can see it clearly. And then
Yeah,
the
that
camera
sounds good to
alongside
me.
that, apparently.
Yeah, hopefully the camera's probably a little bit better on that too, and some kind of reasons to upgrade besides the robotic arm that we've been making such a big deal about. It's just because it's the most interesting part of that whole equation.
Yeah.
All right, so then we start getting into September. And I mean, we've talked about the iPhones pretty
Always
recently,
iPhone
but we can
season.
kind of run through it. Always iPhone season, the best season.
So kicking off with the standard iPhone 17, we're expecting this to get ProMotion for the first time. Both of the standard models are expected to get that. More scratch-resistant front glass. Obviously, there will be a newer chip. And one of the most significant upgrades coming across the whole lineup, in my opinion, is the upgrade to a 24-megapixel front-facing camera. Right now, that is just at 12 megapixels, so that's doubling in resolution. And considering quite how long it has been stuck at 12 megapixels, that should lead to a considerably higher fidelity selfies, particularly, say, for content creators that depend on that front-facing camera. This may make the iPhone 17 lineup much more of a must-buy than it would have been in previous years. That's pretty much it for the standard model. And then the more interesting model is this iPhone 17 Air, replacing the iPhone 17 Plus. And while it will have almost entirely the same specifications as that entry-level model, because they're both still those standard iPhone 17 models, there will be some differences. So it will only have one rear camera that will be centered on the back of the device. It will have a single speaker. It will have no SIM card slot. And I think that's pretty much it, other than obviously having a extremely thin design, less than 6 millimeters probably, making it the thinnest iPhone ever. And also a slightly different display size. So right now the iPhone 16 Plus is 6.7 inches. We're expecting the iPhone 17 Air to come in at 6.6 inches, so just ever so slightly smaller.
What's with all the? So I think this is what I don't want to move on too quickly. Hold on, I'll rephrase this later. But I think the iPhone 17 getting ProMotion is huge. Like, it's time. People have been complaining. Although I don't know if most of the actual non-tech nerds have been complaining about this, but this will finally quiet all the tech nerds that have been complaining that 60 hertz is just not good enough in this day and age. And then the Air really is the most intriguing out of everything, to be quite honest. And I think everybody agrees with that, just to see where it's kind of at. I'm not sure that I'm going to get it, or not, let me rephrase. I'm not sure that I'm going to use it full time, but it is really, really intriguing to see something like that be so thin. But I've been seeing a lot for the 17 Pro and Pro Max, this whole like, what's going on with this two-tone look that I've been seeing lately? Is that something that we're expecting for this year on the back?
Yes. So it looks like the device is moving away from titanium and back toward an aluminium frame. Now, the iPhone historically, for many years, did have an aluminium frame and an aluminium back. But when Apple introduced wireless charging, because you can't wirelessly charge through metal, it had to switch to a glass back. So it did that with the iPhone 8 and with the iPhone 10. The laws of physics have not changed, so it still can't wirelessly charge through aluminium. But the actual wireless charging portion of the back of the iPhone is relatively small. So it looks like now the design will be a little bit more like a glass window in the back of a new aluminium frame, rather than glass taking up the whole back. Because right now you've got that big sort of glass plateau that is made of 3D glass that extends out of the device. Moving to aluminium, to me, makes a lot of sense because it is a very lightweight material. It's much lighter than glass, and it also is not going to shatter like glass as well. So it should make the iPhone more durable, at least in terms of the glass breaking. It's not as strong as titanium, but
Right.
to me, this was not a major issue. I just can imagine it maybe getting a little bit more chewed up if you drop this on I don't know, like a hard concrete rough surface outdoors.
Yeah, I've dropped this 16 Pro Max quite a few times, and it's maintained its frame to be not nicked up or scratched up really at all. So it is impressive. And we talked about this last time, but for those who might not have caught that episode, I think it's incredibly lame that Apple's going to try to tell us that the aluminum frame and everything is actually the way to go after we just made a big deal on how great it is to go from aluminum to stainless steel and then stainless steel to titanium, and no, it's aluminum again.
It's a question of how it's marketed, because if Apple comes
Well,
out and
sure,
says
they'll do it the right way.
if they say that actually they found a way that they can make the aluminium just as strong as titanium, but with all of the obviously the weight benefits of aluminium, then I think a lot of people will stomach that.
And again, I cannot stress enough that I am on board with changing it to aluminum.
Yeah.
I don't care, and I really like some of these renders out there where it's this two-tone kind of design where you've got the aluminum being a slightly darker or different shade than the glass, perhaps. That's going to be on there, and I think that looks really really cool. Kind of reminds me of the older iPhones. Granted, those were not the same material; it was more like plastic and more aluminum and plastic for those 3GS era.
Yeah.
So I don't know, be kind of cool.
And some of the other upgrades we're expecting, of course, a new chip. But more interestingly, we're expecting the amount of memory to increase. So right now, the Pro
12.
models have had 8 gigabytes of memory for many years. But now, of course, Apple Intelligence has an 8 gigabyte memory requirement. So it would make sense that, considering that now even the all Mac models start with 16 gigabytes of memory, it's time to just start pushing that on the iPhone as well. And of course, to start with the Pro models. So for those Apple Intelligence and machine learning tasks, the Pro models will be able to perform better and be just that little bit more future-proof. And maybe Apple will unveil some Apple Intelligence features that are exclusive to the Pro models because they have that added amount of memory. Not that Apple ever actually talks about the amount of memory, but maybe that time is over now, considering how crucial memory is to AI, and also how central AI is now to mobile devices specifically. So that will be interesting. And the last thing is the camera upgrades.
Yeah, which should be pretty substantial. We didn't get what we were thinking this year with like the telephoto lens, at least. Not a huge change at least from the Pro Max to the other Pro Max. For the Pro, getting the same as what we had last year is, I guess, a big update for them. But what else do you think would be, something that would help with the marketing capabilities for us Pro users of the iPhone?
Well, it looks like Apple's plan generally with its Pro camera technology is to introduce one major hardware improvement each year. So thinking back, we had the jump to the 48 megapixel main camera on the iPhone 14. We had the introduction of the tetraprism telephoto on the iPhone 15. And with the iPhone 16, we upgraded to 48 megapixels on the ultra wide. It looks like next year, Apple is going to move the telephoto camera up to 48 megapixels. So that means that all 3 rear cameras will now be at 48 megapixels. And I love the telephoto camera. So I will be really pleased.
Oh, do you now?
I do.
Even at this new focal length?
It still is a little bit too close for me.
Okay, but it's so good, though.
A resolution bump will be incredible for that. And also, there are rumors that Apple is going to introduce a mechanical aperture for the first time. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if that was exclusive to the Pro Max. We actually don't know yet. Presumably, that would be on the wide camera. But that is something that Apple has never offered before. I think it has been offered on some Android devices. But certainly, that would be a pretty interesting pro photography feature.
That would be really cool. All right. So we didn't actually have this. We're mostly focused on hardware here, but we forgot at WWDC there's all the new software. And we don't need to go through everything, but I do want to mention, just because we were talking about the iPhone and Apple Intelligence, are you expecting any major new Apple Intelligence features to happen this year? Or, I mean, I feel like we really need to see something pretty crazy and new and different and exciting going into 2025, or I think this is going to be labeled even a bigger bust than I've already seen. And I personally do enjoy some of these features. I don't know that I'm using them a ton. Are you still using Genmoji a ton? More than you said you were going to use?
I mean, not a ton, but I am using it more than I thought I would, and I am having quite a lot of fun with it. So I was wrong about that. Going forward, I don't really know, but I think it is a matter of time before Apple unveils its own chatbot style alternative to ChatGPT. It may well be that they sort of pre-announce that they are working on this, even if it's as part of Siri, if they call it Siri 2 or it's presented as its own thing. And if Apple says that they are developing this and that it will debut in 2026, but it wouldn't surprise me if they put that out there, considering how interested shareholders are in AI right now.
Yeah, I think we also need to get that personal context before we get any
do.
of that.
We do.
Yeah.
That is essential, but I'm trying to think forward in terms of new features we don't have yet. I mean, what would certainly be very welcome to me would be more AI-based image and video editing features on the iPhone, and also better personalization and suggestions. Which still are not that fantastic. An AI-driven function within the calendar app, for example, would be really useful. Right now, you can't even input calendar events with natural language on the iPhone. You can only just about do that in the Mac version of the calendar app. It really is time that I can just type in the calendar app, like dinner tomorrow at 7, and it just knows what event to add. So there's a little bit of a spectrum there in terms of the sort of things we could see.
Do you think we'll see some of those photo and video editing, or just more like photo editing features that are available in Pixelmator and Photomator, since Apple did acquire them, or is it still too early because it's probably not going to be finalized by then?
I truly don't know. I would like to
there's some
think
good AI features in there.
There are some really good ones.
Yeah.
Even just like the automatic crop and straighten features are really useful, and they would be right at home in the default Photos app.
Yeah, the removing of the background, while you can technically do on like the preview app by just kind of, pulling the subject, it's not anywhere near as good as what you get on Pixelmator. So I think that's huge for people, just to be able to one click, it automatically recognizes what you're looking at and can remove the background. And there's just a lot of, like, in Photomator, there's, machine learning, auto color correction. Like, we kind of have that in Final Cut Pro. Like, I can see that kind of hitting pretty well on the Photos app for, iPhone and Mac. But I don't know if, like, when that acquisition is going to be finalized to which Apple can start, like, taking those features and using them. But that'll be pretty cool. All right. And then obviously alongside iPhones, we get Apple Watches. I don't know that there's anything super exciting here, to be honest with you. Maybe Apple Watch Ultra 3 and Series 11 hopefully getting a major new health feature. This year it was sleep apnea. I don't know that I would consider that to be anything groundbreaking, but what do you think?
So we are expecting hypertension detection, which is for blood pressure.
That would be great.
This is a feature that's been rumored for a very long time, and I think that will affect a lot more people than something like sleep apnea. I mean, sleep apnea is still a very good upgrade, and it's always good to see every year there being more health features layered into this incredibly compact and accessible device. But hypertension would be really good. Right now, there is basically nothing else at all rumored for the Apple Watch Series 11 other than hypertension detection. It just got a redesign with the Series 10, even though a lot of people say that wasn't really a redesign. It was a redesign. It's a brand new casing. It's a brand new digital crown. It's got a different aspect ratio. The displays are bigger. So now it's time to start bumping up the hardware. I would be surprised if maybe there was a chip upgrade, because the S10 chip in the current Apple Watch is the same as the S9 chip. It's just more compact. And especially with the importance of Apple Intelligence, maybe the Apple Watch could start to get some Apple Intelligence features with a more powerful chip. I actually think it might be a little bit too soon for that next year. It may actually be maybe with the Apple Watch Series 12. But historically, the Apple Watch is not usually an enormous annual upgrade. So I can believe that right now the main upgrade is just hypertension detection. The Apple Watch Ultra 3, going that little bit further, and with the focus on outdoors use exploration, is expected to get message via satellite, which of course we've had on the iPhone since the iPhone 14. And the Apple Watch Ultra seems like a pretty good device to put that on.
I agree. I mean, it's like you don't really need to do much at this point to the hardware if you can just get in some of these really groundbreaking health features or just new features in general that might appeal to for the Apple Watch Ultra 3 specific outdoors related activities, and just kind of making it more in line with those other watches out there. Maybe incorporate better niche functions. I don't know, golf comes to mind for me. There's a ton of like golf specific apps for the Apple Watch, but there are actual like golf related watches out there, specific running watches that do different things. I know Apple's been doing that, but there's more room for improvement outside of hardware refreshes, which, don't get me wrong, I love, but it's not necessary at this point. All right, I see the last few things on this list here, and I have a couple of questions. Why are we expecting the iPad Pro to be late 2025 when we got in May last year?
Because the
not as
iPad
big of an
Pro,
upgrade.
The iPad Pro always runs on an 18-month upgrade cycle usually.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. We don't do annual for that.
And also, considering that will be the M5 chip, we're getting M4 devices all the way through until the Mac Pro. So it would make sense for the iPad Pro to maybe be the first M5 device. And just like Apple did with the M4, develop some more interest around the iPad Pro by giving it the very first M5 chips.
So speaking of M5, what makes it more intriguing there is you have Vision Pro 2 with an M5 chip. How likely are we going to see that in 25, or is that more of a 26 thing?
It's expected toward the end of 25. It could be early 26. I think it will actually be next year, because I think that the Vision product line really needs a re-injection of energy. And I think that if Apple can develop some or sort of curate some real interest in Vision Pro again, when now there will, by the time this device comes out, there will be far more immersive content. We'll be onto Vision OS 3. And then thinking about Apple Intelligence being on this device for the first time, how is Apple Intelligence useful in the world of spatial computing? Suddenly you're going to have a lot of people revisiting this device, me included. And this is not rumored, but if it contains a new headband that is more comfortable, and if they manage to shave the weight off even by just 100 grams, this device could be more successful than the first generation model.
Maybe shave the price off a little bit too. But
yeah, even if you just get it down to $3,000, that would be a slight improvement. And I think that by the end of next year, people will be ready to look at Vision Pro all over again. So I think it would be a missed opportunity and will actually damage the perception of Vision Pro if they leave that until 26. I think that really does need to be next year.
I think I'd argue that they should give a sneak peek at the very least to the Vision Pro 2 at WWDC when talking about Vision OS 3, right? I feel like just give us a little bit of some breadcrumbs of what the next generation could look like. Teaser trailer could be cool. Heck, I'd even go as far as saying that they should kind of give a little bit of insight into what their plans are for the low-cost version, if they're still even remotely thinking about that.
It's difficult, though, because then it kills sales of the current model.
True.
And typically where Apple does that, it does that like with the first-gen HomePod or the TrashCan Mac Pro. Yeah. But then they're basically like just happy to not sell any for 6 months. So absolutely, Vision OS 3 will be important. And I'm very interested to see where Apple goes, because Vision OS 2 is a fairly small upgrade. I mean, Mac Virtual Display was the best thing there, but there's not a huge amount else going on there other than the new gestures and the keyboard occlusion and all of that sort of thing. But I'm interested in Vision OS 3.
So yeah, those are the last few things that we have. iPad Pro, I just mentioned a little bit ago that's not going to be till late 2025. Really, just an M5 chip, probably nothing redesigned there, considering that we just got that Vision Pro 2. Who knows? But Apple 5 M5 chip and Apple Intelligence. MacBook Pro, of course, you can expect something that's just going to be M5 chips. But the last biggest thing is probably AirPods Pro 3, right? Because we're expecting a little bit of a refresh design, some improved audio quality, and active noise cancellation, some other new features perhaps that you might be thinking of.
Yes, so the AirPods Pro seem to run like all AirPods models, other than obviously the AirPods Max, which are pretty neglected, on a 3-year upgrade cycle. And it will be 3 years since the AirPods Pro 2 were unveiled in September of next year. The most interesting upgrade will probably be temperature sensors, potentially maybe even something like a heart rate sensor. But Apple wants to use the AirPods for health, because just like the Apple Watch, it's a product that you wear, and getting data points from different places on the body. So right now you've got a body temperature sensor on the Apple Watch, which is quite limited in how you can use it because it's only from one place on your body. But if Apple is also getting body temperature information from your AirPods, suddenly that is a lot more data to use. But even just refreshing the design, maybe the stems will get a little bit shorter, a newer chip that may be more power efficient, so maybe we'll get slightly better battery life, and that will come along with better active noise cancellation, which is already really good, but it definitely could get better. So that probably will be a really popular product.
I'm excited for it. I'm looking forward to any kind of new features for the AirPods Pro. I think it's such a good product, probably one of Apple's best in a long time, to be quite honest with you. It's one of those product lines that, even with the original AirPods, it changed the game. Like, yeah, there were others out there, but once this came out and it got, some heat for looking ridiculous at first, who doesn't have AirPods out there? I mean, there are some, but just in a vague sense of the word.
Well,
Who
it's
isn't
telling that
walking around with some?
every other
Yeah.
pair of wireless earbuds now has a little charging case and stems, just like the
Yes.
AirPods Pro, pretty much. Other
Yes.
than like the Beats, which are owned by Apple, and
Yeah.
yes, I know there's some Sony ones and whatever, but generally they sort of redefined what these sorts of products look like.
Yeah. There are lots of companies making the switch to make it more recognizable. And what's recognizable? AirPods. And why? Because everyone has them, or at least everyone has seen them in some way or another. And whether you like that or not, it's, whatever, but it's just true. So that is, in a nutshell, we kind of sped through it. And of course, things are subject to change, and don't quote us on all of this, but it is kind of the roadmap for 2025. So exciting year. There's tons of new, good features coming to existing products, a couple of potential new products on the horizon. So I'm excited. With the MacBook, real quick, OLED for 2026, right?
Yeah,
Very
not next
minor.
year.
Yeah, that's a bummer. But all right, well, would love to hear from everyone in the comments down below what you're thinking, what you're hoping for in 2025. And yeah, we'll catch everybody in the new year, and happy new year to everyone out there.